Good morning, Matt.
Good evening from Australia.
So welcome to our fourth Q&A session. And today we first have a little announcement that we are going to release a new chapter today, and that's the MVVM chapter. And it's pretty complete. There are a few sections here and there that we will add in later, but it's already a pretty long chapter. So we hope you enjoy that one. And in this chapter, in this MVVM implementation, we use Rx for reactive bindings. And we've struggled a bit with the level of detail of how much should we explain Rx or shouldn't we explain Rx, and what do we need so that you can follow the code even if you're not familiar with it. And so we are happy about any kind of feedback about that. So if you read the chapter and you feel we should explain a little bit more or a little bit less, then let us know, and we can see how we can make sense out of all the feedback and incorporate it. So that's about the release for today. Then for the Q&A, we only have one question today. So let's get to it. And that's actually a follow-up question from last week. Last week, we talked about this layer issue, actually. So in the very first issue of objc.io, we recommended or suggested, if you have code on your view controller that configures a more complex table view cell, for example, that you can pull it out of the view controller and put it into an extension on the cell. And somebody wrote in and said, well, actually, they just prefer to put it into the view class itself. So the table view cell class, just put this method there that configures the view from a model object. And well, maybe it's not the cleanest approach. Maybe there should be a protocol boundary between, or you should just pass on a struct with the data for the view or something like that. But well, it works well. And so the question is basically, what do we think about that? Or what's our opinion about something like that?
Well, if it works well, that's great. If it keeps your code simple, that's also awesome. And I don't personally have a problem with that. I could imagine doing the same thing. Of course, if you do this everywhere, it might become a problem. You don't want to litter your view code with all kinds of model code or model handling code. You want to try to keep these layers separate so that they're easy to manage and the views are better or easier to reuse, and the model stays abstract. That being said, if it's just an exception, then I would say, why not? Matt, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, a view controller is normally a collection of different responsibilities, including observing the model, transforming model data to prepare for the view, and then various view management tasks, including layout, animations, and other kinds of selection and other effects. I don't see any particular problem if you wanted to take those more view-related tasks out of a view controller and push them down into a view, particularly things like layout. It's common to have a container view that provides layout for a subtree of views. And even though the idea in model view controller is that your views are very reusable, and a container view is not reusable, the same can be said of view controllers. View controllers aren't reusable either. So if there's a single fixture container view in your app that provides layout behavior, I don't think that's a bad thing. As to whether or not you should push model data all the way down into the view, not normally, but you're certainly going to have very big views that do presentation, visualization, and other kind of data-heavy rendering tasks. You know, perhaps you have a 3D scene graph or something else where you need to give it a large amount of data that are going to need to have a big model object set on them. So, you know, in these cases, yes, it's kind of it's its own beast. It doesn't easily fall into any kind of application design pattern, but you need to manage your abstractions appropriate to the task. So, you know, sometimes it happens.
Yeah.
I think it's also a good guiding principle, this idea of having of the views being reusable. It guides you into this direction to not to not have model code spread all across your views. But then sometimes we all know that it's not true, really, right? We write a lot of views, especially table view cells, and they are not being reused. It's just not the case. And I think it's good to be pragmatic about that and to view it as a guiding principle. But then you sometimes have a case where you know it's specific, it's not going to be reused, and it's one of these cases, like Matt said, where it's a container that has a bit more to manage, and it's fine to do it there. If it doesn't give you any advantages to put a layer of abstraction in between, then in the end, what's the point?
Yeah.
So that's the one follow-up question we have. And we thought, since we only have this one question, we talk a little bit about what's coming up next. So we have been working concurrently, so to say, on a bunch of chapters.
Mm-hmm. In parallel?
In parallel,
yes.
Exactly. So I've been working on the chapter about the Elm architecture. We had a lot of material written there before already. You can see on this code, and there's a lot there. And I'm trying to pull it all together and to finish it up. Mm-hmm. And what have you been working on?
I've been working on MAVB. So that's Matt's architecture, if you will. And I'm trying to describe it, and it's been really fun. There are a couple of really nice concepts in there, and I think once I learned to see through the initial hurdles that I had in understanding, I think it made a lot of sense, and yeah, it's been fun putting that together. What about you, Matt?
I've been writing the MVC plus view state chapter. It's a lot less tricky than either of the two chapters you're working on. It's mostly just reusing ideas from MVC in different ways, but it's interesting, and I think it has a lot of insight into how you can think about MVC in a different way, even if you don't want to move forward to some more data-heavy topics.
Yeah, so that's approximately the roadmap. Probably MVC plus view state is the next one we are going to release, or partly release, and then Elm and MAVB in some not yet defined order, and probably also some smaller updates in between where we just add things to existing chapters. And then, of course, next week we are going to do another one of these Q&A sessions. So
we need more cues.
Yeah, we need more cues, exactly. If you have questions about stuff we already released, so also especially the MVVM chapter we are releasing today, but also if you have questions about things we haven't released yet, or maybe even questions that we are not writing about, but which are architecture related, just send them our way, and we will see how we can integrate all that into the next Q&A. Cool. So that's it for today. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
See you next week.